Good morning and welcome to this public meeting of the University of Pittsburgh Board of Trustees. My name is John Verbanek and it's my honor to serve as chairperson of the board. This meeting has been duly advertised as a public meeting in accordance with the Sunshine Act and is therefore open to members of the public as observers. This meeting is being streamed on the university's YouTube channel, and a recording of our meeting will be made available on the Board of Trustees website afterwards. Participation in today's meeting is limited to members of the board and to those individuals the board has invited in advance to take part. A quorum is present for business, and as such, I'll move forward with our agenda. And our first order of business today is the approval of minutes. The minutes of our May 8th, 2025 public meeting were circulated in advance of today's meeting and were included in our meeting materials. May I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Is there a second? Thank
Second.
you. Any comments or corrections to the minutes? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. The minutes are approved. For our next order of business, I would like to call upon Chancellor Gable and ask her to share with us her Chancellor's report. Joan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the board, it's a pleasure to be with you today and have this opportunity to update you on activities that have taken place since we were last together, but also give you a look ahead at some of the things that we expect to see down the road. So first, I want to share that on June 11th, we held our second community town hall. We had over 2,000 attendees, even though it was the second effort, which was really nice to see. Gives us a real opportunity and platform to share as much information as possible, to answer questions directly from the Pitt community, and make sure that as changes come over the transom, people are as informed as possible and we have direct opportunities to provide feedback. So I want to thank everybody who makes those town halls possible, especially including the people who pose the questions and offer us the opportunities to engage. A lot of the questions that we received are in an area which we would like to update you on today, and that is how the university is reacting to some of the events and changes happening beyond the campus, but that affect us on campus. And I want to walk you through the legs of the stool of our strategy in that space. The first is our advocacy. Our advocacy starts at a very personal one-on-one level, engaging with elected officials and agency heads in Harrisburg and DC, as well as their teams, our allies and partners, to be very actively expressing why we think the university and its people and their efforts deserve their support, and also then work very actively with our national organizations, AAU, APLU, ACE, as an example. There are more, which connect us then with our peer institutions and allow us to present an amplified voice in concert with our peers. Where appropriate, we're also engaged in litigation or supporting briefs alongside peer institutions and national organizations in an effort to make sure that where we think appropriate, our story is told and our work can continue. We've also really organized both on campus and nationally around information dissemination and PR, because we want to make sure that the total work of the university on behalf of our students, on behalf of our research, and on behalf of the communities that we serve is widely understood. At the national level, that includes a PR campaign that's being driven by the AAU called Breakthroughs. Breakthroughs is being published in national outlets where our elected officials are likely to see it, and also in the regional outlets that represent the districts where most of our decision makers are, from which they are elected. And it highlights multiple examples, largely in testimonial format, of what research universities do writ large for the benefit of the individuals affected and then the general public. On campus, we have a corollary PR campaign that we call Research Matters. That is a toolkit focused on all the great research and its impact that is happening here and driven by our people here at Pitt. This is a way for our community to have the resources to talk about what they see as our greatest source of impact when they have engagement opportunities, whether it be for faculty, students, or staff. And we encourage you to engage with the Research Matters website if you are interested. And then lastly, we are working to be at the table for the development of policy. And the main outlet for this work is a group that is referred to as JAG, which stands for Joint Associations Group. This group includes experts from the top research universities, independent research institutions, big research hospitals, and some of the national organizations. Rob Rutenbar was selected for this group, so he's in an excellent position to ensure that the work of research universities like us is supported in the best possible way. But we are also aware that there could be alternative, transparent, functional models for how federal research funding works, and we're delighted to be at the table to work on what those new models might look like. We expect to see proposals emerging soon. There are preliminary drafts already, and so we're seeing really good, timely progress out of that group. In the meantime, amidst change, we want to make sure that our research enterprise and especially the people engaged in that enterprise are supported. And so we've launched an effort called Pivot, which is emerging out of the Pitt Research Concierge Program that Rob Rutenbar has updated the community on over the last few months. This is an effort, obviously, to continue our federal funding for research, but also to look at expanding how we partner with state, local, corporate, and philanthropic sources, many of whom we already work with, but where there are opportunities to grow. So Pivot is intended to enhance and support our faculty and make sure that we're optimizing alternative sources of funding beyond or in addition to federal research funding, and that we're being functional and efficient about it, have open pathways so that this is a journey that our faculty and the administration in support of them can take together. Speaking of resources, I know we have all been watching closely as the One Big Beautiful Bill Act has now become law. This bill obviously has a lot of components, but there are significant changes in the higher education space, particularly on federal student aid at the graduate and professional level, along with a few other changes. So we are tracking very closely the impact that this will have for our students who rely on Grad Plus loans, the programs that include those students, and then what the domino effect of this might be, while we concurrently seek opportunities to mitigate the impact and continue our ongoing engagement so that as the statute is executed upon, hopefully we're at the table advocating for ways that allow core mission work to continue. In this context, we've been doing our own budget planning on campus. And that, of course, has been in partnership with all of you and also with shared governance input through the Budget Advisory Committee, with great appreciation to the Finance and Budget Committee and the board and Dwayne Pinkney and Truman Wingrove and his team, their team. We have been looking at how to address all of the budgetary contingencies that are on the table. So as you know, our proposed budget is for $3.2 billion for fiscal year 2026. It considers these contingencies and also the consultation with our community. It includes a projected research base of $1.2 billion, demonstrating our strong commitment to innovation and discovery. It includes a 2.5% salary increase pool for unionized faculty and non-unionized faculty and staff, and a $267 million capital budget. Modest tuition increases, including 2% for in-state undergraduate and graduate students, which we are only suggesting as necessary to maintain the quality of our academic offerings and be sensitive to the financial realities at the same time for our families and our students. Our budget assumes a Commonwealth appropriation that is flat. Although the state has not yet approved its budget, we're optimistic about receiving the continued support in the appropriation, and we're optimistic about the process of the performance-based funding efforts. And members of the board, as we take this important next step together, I really want to express my appreciation not only for the development of the budget, but for how our community has engaged in the obviously necessary belt-tightening efforts that are underway. We've been in a hiring freeze. We've been reducing our non-compensation spending. We've been able to think both short-term and long-term about how to bring our expenses more in line with our revenue. And we're committed to doing so in a way that maintains all of this robust, positive momentum we have in terms of new student demand and the output of our research and the ways in which we elevate and support the communities that we serve. So we've been very strategic in this budget and thinking about a combination of belt tightening and strategic circumspect use of reserves so that we can be smooth, if you will, about how we control our expenses, while at the same time making sure that abrupt changes to our spending don't undermine all of this really positive momentum, financial aid support for our students above and beyond the state appropriation, investments in innovation that generate new businesses and new jobs, and otherwise reflect the way in which we serve the community and society as a whole. Another way in which we are addressing the moment in which we find ourselves is in response to what has come to be known as the Dear Colleague letter from the U.S. Department of Education, which we received in February. After we received that letter, we immediately established a representative campus working group earlier this spring to look at the contents of that letter, but in the context of our goals as articulated in the plan for Pitt, which states that we cultivate a welcoming and engaged community where all members can thrive and be their best selves. So we took input and advice from across campus and through the Dear Colleague letter working group and have accepted their recommendation to launch a new Office of Institutional Engagement and Wellbeing as of July 1st. This office will be under the direction of Dr. Clyde Wilson Pickett and continues the committed work in critical areas such as civil rights compliance, Title IX, ADA, accessibility, among others, many of which were previously directed by the former Office of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. And we look forward to working together with all of you and all of our campus stakeholders as the mission of this office evolves. In other changes, many of you are aware that the House case, as it's come to be known, versus the NCAA, was finally resolved in that the settlement agreement was approved by the court in June. So pursuant to that settlement, universities, including Pitt, are now permitted to share revenue with student athletes up to a specific cap, which this year is $20.5 million. That is a revenue share as opposed to what has come to be known as name, image, and likeness, which students are also allowed to earn outside of the House settlement. That's a different question, but the House settlement does put in place enforcement structures on how name, image, and likeness deals are entered into with third parties. So lots of change, and we're continuing to work closely within campus and with our partners, our conference nationally, the NCAA, et cetera, to ensure that implementation of these changes goes smoothly, keeps us competitive, but also supports and absolutely doubles down on our commitment to our student athletes. And speaking of students, you'll recall, members of the board, that in May, we graduated the Pittsburgh campus's largest class ever. On the heels of that exciting news and really beautiful day, I'm pleased to share some projections around our incoming fall class, who will begin arriving on campus next month. Summer goes by very quickly. So I'm proud to report that the Pittsburgh campus received a record number of applications, nearly 65,000 for this academic year, more than a 6% increase over last year. We anticipate an excellent first-year class with the Commonwealth extremely well represented, and it's going to set a new watermark for Pitt, both in terms of size and quality, and is very much in line with our commitments in the strategic plan around our enrollment goals. We're very excited to welcome them. We really look forward to them being here. We miss having students on campus, and we are quite confident in the quality of the academic experience we'll be able to offer thanks to the work we're all doing together. So with that, Mr. Chair, I conclude my report.
Thank you, Chancellor, for that very thorough update. Do any trustees have a question or comment for the Chancellor? Trustee Lieberman.
Chancellor, and this may be for Alan Green, how is the NIL affecting us in our commitment, which we've had for all these years, to the student athlete, and making sure that everybody who comes to Pitt, if possible, graduates. Is it throwing a wrench in it? Is it causing us a problem? I'd be curious to know the answer to that.
I'll just start by saying that our student athletes are students first, and we are very proud to be a very strong academic institution, and that informs all of our strategies. But with the details on how that's unfolding administratively, I'll turn it over to Alan Green.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I mean, one of the things that's really important to us is that our student athletes remain student athletes. Understanding that we have 500 student athletes in our system, and what we see publicly tends to skew toward the high-profile athletes in football and men's basketball as it relates to NIL and the rev share conversation. It remains critically important to us that that we fulfill our responsibility to serve our entire student athlete. That's athletically, that's academically, and that's personally. And what's cool about what we get to do, our team sees these young people every single day, and these 18 to 22-year-olds, although they can, run fast, jump high, throw hard, they're still kids at the end of the day, and they're still learning and growing. And we have a responsibility and an obligation to foster that. And we get a chance to see them every day grow and learn. We see them fail, we see them pick themselves up and succeed. And part of our ethos is making sure that they're students first and they're athletes.
Thank you, Alan. Trustee Varschetti.
Thank you, Chairperson Verbanek. Chancellor gave an excellent report. Really exciting to hear the news about the applications being at a record number at the University of Pittsburgh. Curious as to the regional campuses and the interest, applications, and enrollment at those campuses, especially in light of Penn State, news that some of their regional campuses are going to be closing down. I think about my marketplace up here in the rural Brockway area with the Penn State Du Bois campus being closed, and us having Bradford campus at Pitt close by. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Absolutely. So there are national headwinds against regional campuses, and we're not immune from that, but I'm very pleased to report that we're on track for all of our regional campuses to, at a minimum, be flat, and in most cases actually go up in terms of enrollment incrementally. So they're stable and improving, which is a reflection of a really strategic effort around enrollment management, retention, and the program offerings being really meaningful for the students who are selecting those campuses, and then where they sit and the professional opportunities the students would have as a result of the location in which they're pursuing their education.
That's great to hear. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Trustee Frederick.
Thank you very much. Can you speak to how changes in immigration policy have affected applications for foreign graduate students?
Yes, both undergraduate and graduate applications are strong. There are some immigration challenges that are well reported in the media in terms of the timing on their immigration status, particularly visas. But the demand is strong and on track for us, and it's an area of interest for us. And we believe in the power of the university community to bring people from diversity of thought, background, and experience together so that they can learn from each other, both in the classroom and beyond the classroom. So we want to make sure that our student population anchored in the Commonwealth, but reflecting a very broad educational opportunity. So we're hopeful and advocating for smooth pipelines for those students, but they remain very strongly interested in coming here.
Thank you, Chancellor. Next, I recognize Trustee Bromley. Gary?
Yes, thank you. David had the same question I did. I just have a follow-on. For those foreign students who are accepted, do we have any ability to track whether they're in the country now or not? Obviously thinking that between now and the fall, there may be changes in travel regulations or other regulations. So, thank you.
I have to say, we communicate very closely with our international students. The recruitment pipeline has a whole office devoted to it that assists with the application, immigration, and then things you may not know when you're an international student, like how do you find housing and things like that. So there's a lot of support offered and a very high touch out of that office, Q&A, resources. But do they have a way of knowing the date of arrival? I'm not sure, but would be happy to find out and report back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chancellor. Next, I'll recognize Trustee Gelati. Debbie?
Yes, thank you, Chancellor Gable, for an excellent update. Can you speak to the impact that the budget proposed for next year, as well as the current political climes, have an impact on the plan for Pitt? Interested in any impact that you can describe for that reason.
Yes, so we are, as you know, last year we were on target and completed all of the all of the outcomes scheduled for last year were completed on time, and we are on track to do the same this year. Some of the efforts within the strategic plan are being reviewed by the Tier Colleague Working Group for expansion to ensure that they are fully open to everyone who may wish to engage. But nothing is off track or falling off track. And that is exactly the reasons for the way in which the budget is proposed. The areas of belt tightening are strategic. The circumspect, careful use of reserves are strategic. And that strategy is informed by what we collectively captured in the plan for Pitt. So we are marching forward despite the headwinds.
Thank you, Chancellor, and thank you, trustees, for those questions. We'll move on in our agenda today to our action items. We have several today. And at this time, I'd like to ask Peter Verischetti, chairperson of the Governance, Nominating, and Trusteeship Committee, to introduce our first action item. Pete?
Thank you, Chairperson Verbanek. The Governance, Nominating, and Trusteeship Committee is charged with managing the Board of Trustees nominating procedures to maintain a board comprised of trustees with the appropriate mix of expertise, skills, backgrounds, and independence to effectively carry out the board's responsibilities in the best interest of the university. On April 4th, 2024, the board approved a 3-year transition plan to move all current special trustees to the term trustee category. At a duly advertised public meeting on July 7th, 2025, our committee recommended accelerating the original 3-year transition plan to move current special trustees to the term trustee category at the earliest opportunity. As such, today we are recommending the election of Jeffrey D. Marchek as a term trustee effective today, July 11th, 2025.
Thank you, Pete. May I have a motion to approve the election of Jeffrey D. Marchek as a term trustee?
So moved.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Marr?
I would just like to note that our penultimate special trustee has been a very special trustee, and I'm delighted that he'll be joining us for a full term.
Thank you for those comments. Any additional comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Are there any abstentions? The motion is passed. Congratulations, Jeff. Thank you for all you've done for Pitt and will continue to do for us. Welcome. Moving on. Thank you. Moving on, as our next item involves the Governance, Nominating, and Trusteeship Committee chairperson in part, I will introduce the next item on behalf of the committee. The Governance, Nominating, and Trusteeship Committee is charged with recommending to the full Board of Trustees individuals to serve as university directors on the UPMC Board of Directors. At a public meeting on July 7th, the committee voted to recommend the re-election of Louis R. Costello, Dr. Vaughn S. Claggett, and James P. Covert, and the election of Peter C. Varschetti to the UPMC Board of Directors. May I have a motion to approve these re-elections and this election as detailed in the resolution included in our meeting materials?
So moved. So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Chairperson Verbanek, I will abstain.
Thank you. The resolution is approved. Thank you to Lou, Vaughn, Jim, and Pete for their service on the UPMC Board of Directors. Now I'd like to ask Committee Chairperson Varschetti to rejoin us and introduce our next item. Pete?
Thank you again, Chairperson Verbanek. As our colleagues will recall, on June 21st, 2024, the Board of Trustees approved the committee charters for the board's executive committee and its 8 standing committees. Last week, with input and advice from the Dear Colleague Letter Working Group, Chancellor Gable announced the creation of the Office of Institutional Engagement and Wellbeing. In view of the university's new administrative structure, the Governance, Nominating, and Trusteeship Committee determined that an update to the composition of the standing committees of the board is warranted to better align with the university's strategic plan and lead to the more effective conduct of the board's oversight responsibilities. At our public meeting on July 7th, we voted to recommend that the 8 standing committees of the board be as follows: Mission and Academic Experience, Research, Innovation, and Partnerships, Finance and Budget, Property and Facilities, Investment, Audit, Risk and Compliance, Well-being, and Governance, Nominating, and Trusteeship. We further recommended that the Board of Trustees adopt a charter for the Well-being Committee, which will provide general oversight and guidance to the university's efforts to remain a welcoming university, an employer of choice, and an organization for which people will maintain a lifelong connection. Our people, students, staff, faculty, alumni, and community members are our most valued asset. And the creation of this standing committee will bring greater board awareness to the well-being of our university community. Chairperson Verbanek, on behalf of the Governance, Nominating, and Trusteeship Committee, I move approval of the resolution to update the composition of the standing committees of the board to adopt the Well-being Committee Charter.
Thank you, Pete. Is there a second for that motion?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Are there any abstentions? Thank you. The resolution is approved. For our next action item, I'd like to ask Finance and Budget Committee Chairperson Ty to lead us through today's final action item. Jack?
Thank you, Chairperson Verbanek. I'll make a few high-level comments, and then I'll ask our CFO, Dwayne Pinkney, to provide more detailed comments. But earlier today, the Finance and Budget Committee voted to recommend to the board the fiscal year 2026 operating budget and capital budget. It's been a challenging year, to say the least, and I want to commend past committee chairperson Larry Merlot, my colleagues on the Finance and Budget Committee, Dr. Pinkney, and the university leadership team for effectively navigating all the change and uncertainty. Bottom line, we are recommending a balanced budget. Dr. Pinkney will speak to how we arrived at this point, and work by the entire university community will be needed over the coming year to achieve this outcome. Continued fiscal discipline is of paramount importance. That said, we as a committee are committed to ensuring the success and competitiveness of the university in the long term. We remain committed to access and affordability, the diversification of our revenue streams, bringing an entrepreneurial mindset to our auxiliary enterprises, and reducing our administrative overhead. This budget positions us to advance these aims. From a 30,000-foot perspective, I'd like to add kind of my view of the budget. And some of this you heard from Chancellor Gable, so I'll try not to repeat what she talked about. But, you know, we face headwinds demographically in the United States, and particularly in the Northeast, on eligible enrollment for universities. And it's really gratifying that the University of Pittsburgh is going to have a record enrollment and certainly record applications. So that speaks very highly of what we're doing here at the University of Pittsburgh. Two, I would say, and the Chancellor alluded to this budget is not balanced on the backs of students and their families. We continue our conservative approach to tuition increases, and that's warranted as the students and faculty combined are the heart and soul of the university, and this budget protects them as best we can. Three, the athletic environment is very challenging, as we discussed earlier in this meeting. But I would just like to emphasize, when you look around the country, there's various ways that schools and universities are attacking the athletic budget issues. But we are not cutting sports, and we are not cutting roster spots. So our student athletes are somewhat protected in that regard. And that makes us a little bit unique from what I see around the country. And finally, we heard about research, which I consider kind of the engine of the university. Very challenging. This budget reflects the current state of research, but we also know that we'll have to look forward in 2026 as the federal government solidifies their budget and their approaches to indirect costs, that our plan for dealing with those will be robust and is already underway, as the Chancellor mentioned. So with that overview, I'd ask Dr. Pinkney to please provide additional details for the board.
Okay. Thank you, Chairperson Teig. And I want to thank you, and I want to thank also Trustee Emeritus Merlot, Larry Merlot, and all the members of the Finance and Budget Committee for their leadership and guidance, to help build this year's budget. All that has been extremely important. The principles that Chair Teig just articulated and the priorities that the Chancellor in her remarks articulated really set the frame for all the work that was done to build the fiscal year 26 budget. So I want to recognize the University Planning and Budget Committee, whose members include faculty, staff, and student representatives. They helped to shape this budget as part of our commitment to the shared governance process. I also want to thank the members of my team who helped to prepare these materials and work throughout the year with partners across the university on these critical financial matters. In the wake of much uncertainty, this budget demonstrates our dedication to academic excellence, research leadership, fiscal responsibility, and community support, as you heard from the Chancellor in her remarks earlier. The University of Pittsburgh's proposed operating budget for fiscal year 2026 is $3.2 billion. This budget reflects Pitt's continued investment in academic excellence, research capacity, and student success. This budget includes a projected research base for fiscal year 2026 of $1.2 billion. We recognize we are operating in a dynamic environment, and we are prepared to be flexible. At the same time, we want to continue to support the dynamic research that takes place at Pitt, which enables us to attract top students and faculty and expand our partnerships with industry and government. Our proposed capital budget of $267 million is primarily focused on preserving and maintaining our existing campus infrastructure and completing construction projects already in progress. Now, let me turn to tuition for the 25-26 academic year. Pitt's tuition rates are designed to ensure the university continues to deliver an exceptional educational experience while balancing the needs of students and their families. As a result, the proposed budget includes the following tuition rate increases for the next academic year. Tuition will increase by 2% for in-state undergraduate and graduate students. Out-of-state undergraduate and graduate students will see a 4% increase in tuition. And after holding tuition flat for the past 2 years, there will be a 1% increase in tuition at the regional campuses. In support of educational affordability, this budget proposes nearly $315 million in financial aid to students and their families, an amount that has increased by nearly 30% since 2020. More than half of all students in-state and out-of-state receive financial aid. For Pennsylvania students, that aid is over and above the in-state tuition discount. This support enables nearly half of Pitt students to graduate from this university debt-free. Reflecting competitive market rates and inflation, the proposed fiscal year 2026 budget also reflects increases in housing rates, which will go up by an average of 6.7%, and meal plans will increase by an average of about 4% on the Pittsburgh campus. Students can expect to see mandatory fee increases in the areas of transportation, wellness, and technology. This reflects student needs and the cost of delivering these improved and essential services to support student success and well-being. In recognition of their dedication and hard work, the proposed budget recommends a 2.5% salary increase for our unionized faculty and non-unionized faculty and staff members. This reflects the university's desire to continue to attract and retain top talent and be an employer of choice. Reflecting our focus on managing costs while maintaining high-quality education standards, we are transitioning from a hiring freeze to a controlled hiring process that's focused on strategic staffing priorities. We also will be collaborating with our responsibility centers to reallocate budget resources to align with Pitt's strategic goals. I want to close by again thanking the Pitt community for its commitment to shared governance, and I want to express my appreciation to the Finance and Budget Committee and this board of trustees for tackling the many challenges associated with this year's budget. I believe our fiscal year 2026 operating and capital budgets reflect our commitment to students, as well as to our dedicated faculty and staff, as we continue to focus on the mission and the strategic goals outlined in the plan for Pitt. Thank you, Chairperson Ty.
Thank you. Thank you, Jack, and thank you, Dwayne. After receiving a motion and a second, we'll have a period of discussion and questions regarding the fiscal year 2026 operating and capital budgets. But first, may I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, discussion, so questions and or comments. I recognize Trustee Marr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the presentation and the hard work by the Budget Committee. As a CPA, I certainly enjoy spreadsheets. And I recognize that a budget is an expression of our path to accomplishing fiscal responsibility. But more importantly, it is the ultimate expression of translating our strategic plan into action. And I just want to salute those involved, in particular our CFO and our chancellor, for really building this budget based upon what our strategic plan is, what the plan for Pitt is supposed to accomplish. And I think we've done a better job of that this year, perhaps, than in memory. So I first want to say thanks. But my question is this. There's so much conversation about indirect costs, but there's little time in that discussion for defining what's meant by indirect costs. And if I didn't know better, I would think it was some hazy sort of, play money. But it's important, I think, for those who pay attention to the budgeting process of this and other universities to really understand that indirect costs embraces reimbursement for things which are direct and essential for the purpose of the grant, like the laboratories themselves. And maybe our CFO could add a little more explanation of why indirect costs are to a large extent direct costs. It's just a matter of how they're paid for.
Yeah.
Thank you. Dwayne, please.
Sure. Well, thank you. It's an excellent question and comment, and I appreciate the framing as well. These costs are not phantom costs. They are real costs that the university incurs to support the important, strategically important and mission important research that the university conducts. And as such, the formula for supporting for these costs are driven by the federal government, the agencies that sponsor the research, and how all of that gets calculated in terms of what we're allowed to reflect as direct versus indirect is all translated to us. I mean, it's mature, and we know it. We understand it very well. The costs are real. We incur the costs. We essentially have to prove that we have those costs in order for them to be reflected in the rates that we negotiate periodically with the sponsoring agencies on the indirects that the agencies will support in our grants and awards. So these include, you mentioned a couple of the things that these include. They include space and the maintenance of our lab facilities. They include heat and electricity, water, our utilities, IT support, compliance, the staff, cleaning of the facilities and waste disposal, just a number of items that are covered under indirect because it is hard to apportion these specific things to a specific project. They are costs that the university incurs to support the broader enterprise, and they are allocated to these specific awards or contracts by the formula that we use. But they are real costs. It's important that we receive the funding. We're appreciative of the funds that we do get. We are in the I'll call it the fight to preserve these funds and this support. At the same time, we are planning on how to reduce our expenses, to reduce our cost structure by sharing facilities and sharing cores in ways that will help us to mitigate any impacts or any reduction in indirect costs that we might experience in the coming months. But thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dwayne. Next, I recognize Trustee Gelati. Debbie?
Yes, thank you. My question relates to the impact, if any, and accommodation in projecting the impact of tariffs and the new tariffs on our operating expenses. Could you comment on that?
Sure. We have been planning for the impact of tariffs, and we do anticipate, and we've already started to experience some impacts. That our work, because our purchasing professionals were kind of on it very early, we did get out ahead of things to help us in some areas to avoid some of the tariffs, to accommodate where we could, because certain items, to the extent that we can purchase domestically, that can mitigate the impact of tariffs. But even for those items that are sold domestically, and even perhaps even produced domestically, certain parts might be either sourced or produced internationally and still subject to the tariffs. So it's important to note that the tariffs are charged when the item comes through customs, not when the item's ordered. We're working very closely with all of our responsibility centers to understand the purchasing priorities that they have for the coming year, and to make sure that we're doing everything that we can where we can to mitigate those impacts by sourcing appropriately domestically where we can, and planning for the impacts, the increase in cost where we can. It's reflected in our budgeting and reflected in the planning that we've done to date. So thank you for the question.
Thank you, Dwayne. Trustee Sen. Deborah?
Thank you. This is a follow-up question on the indirect cost. I understand that the current budget is assuming the indirect cost is unchanged. Indirect cost, the rate will, how likely the cut will be materialized in the year 2026? And could you elaborate what's a contingency plan if that happens?
Sure. So we have shared some perspective in meetings with the Finance and Budget Committee and in other forums about at least the contours of the contingency plans that are underway. They have largely to do with space considerations, staffing as well, making adjustments in the funding that we use to support individuals who are on contracts and grants today, or on indirect cost recovery funds, I should say, to the extent that we can move salaries and compensation to direct expense, then we're exploring those opportunities. Also on other funding sources, you heard in the Chancellor's remarks that we're also exploring ways to help those PIs who need to make adjustments or shifts, moving from one grant to another or one source of funding to another. So putting some contingencies in place to help those individuals to make those transitions. But the space considerations, sharing facilities, sharing core equipment or equipment, those are some of the primary considerations and plans that we're taking. And also, as the Chancellor indicated earlier, making sure that we're doing everything that we can in an appropriate use of our reserves so that we're not experiencing whiplash in these critical areas, that we have a smooth transition where we can, and we are pivoting to those areas where we can better support, or our researchers can have more success and perhaps move into other areas of research. And also looking to secure funding to support research through other avenues as well. So there are a range of factors that we're considering and contemplating, and a step process that we'll take as the picture becomes more clear about the specific impacts of any changes in indirect cost recovery. But we think our contingency planning is robust and ready, and that we'll be nimble to be able to make the shifts that we'll need to make in the coming months.
Yeah, can I add a comment on this?
Certainly, Jack, go right ahead.
Thank you. Deborah, great question and excellent response from Dwayne. We've heard about the contingency plans, and the Budget Committee will be laser focused on this area over the next coming months to make sure that we don't get upside down here and end up with a a big hole in the budget. And we're pretty confident with the administration's plan will bear fruit and we'll be fine for the fiscal year 26. Obviously, we don't know what the answer is from the federal government yet, but we're on top of this with the administration.
Thanks, Jack. And finally, I recognize Trustee Berrien. So Lisa?
Thank you, Chairman. Dr. Pinkney, I just had one question. As we transition from the hiring freeze to controlled hiring, could you describe what controlled hiring looks like?
Yes, thank you, Trustee Berrien. Controlled hiring will look a lot like a freeze, but it's different in this regard. We know that we have strategic hiring decisions to make to support the critical mission work that the university conducts and needs to conduct, consistent with the plan for Pitt, consistent with supporting this enrollment, this large first-year enrollment that we're anticipating to show up here in just a few weeks, and all of our faculty and staff. To that end, we will make sure that there is a very refined and well-documented process of review for all hiring decisions that will look different from previous hiring plans, where if you've got a vacancy, the expectation is that you're going to fill that vacancy. There's really no discussion or necessary review. The position's vacant, or someone just got promoted, or they took another opportunity, and you just immediately go out and post that position for rehire. In those instances, we are taking a close look to make sure that the work cannot be done differently, that we can adjust for that work either through process, technology, or just rearranging among those individuals who are engaged in that work, or sharing services in ways that that might be new for a given area, a responsibility center. So it's, when we say controlled, it's really that review piece, the oversight around, and we'll be reviewing reports on hiring periodically to make sure that we understand what the trends are, so that we know where to lean in and have conversations. It is not our intention to slow down in areas where we know we have critical needs and we need to accelerate to support the mission, but we also don't want to be making decisions in a knee-jerk fashion without any oversight and coordination. So we'll be doing that not just in our respective responsibility centers, but across the enterprise, because we may have capacity in some areas to support other areas that, when we're working kind of more or less in isolation, we don't necessarily have line of sight. So this control process with HR as our lead kind of partner in bringing all this together, making sure that we have line of sight into what's happening across the enterprise, we'll have the opportunity to control our expense, but also to continue to support critical HR decisions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dwayne. Are there any further questions before moving on with a vote?
John, I had one other question.
Certainly, Jack. Go right ahead, sir.
Thank you. Dwayne, would you just comment what you've commented at budget committee meetings about the record enrollment and how you are accommodating the housing of students? And because the budget committee isn't just about, revenue and expenses, we also ask to make sure that these students will be happy in their accommodations. So can you just give the full board a little thumbnail of how you're accommodating the record enrollment?
Sure. Well, our teams have been working for many weeks now, months, to prepare for this large first-year class. And so we're making sure that we have the beds for these individuals. That work is largely done. We've been signing block leases to accommodate this first year of enrollment. We've made changes in the space that we have on campus. We've had to densify a bit. So going in places where we've had double occupancy, moving to threes, and where we have 3 students moving to quads, using spaces, lounges and other spaces. So we've had to do that. At the same time, our colleagues in student affairs have been wonderful partners in working with us to make sure that our considerations for space and how we accommodate students and the support and programming support that we provide to students is not diminished. In fact, that we're very intentional and that we enhance that work, recognizing that we will have we'll have our students in intimate settings, I'll say, but we're accommodating them and we're making sure that their standards are very high, and that the student experience, that the first year experience, and for all of our students on campus, that it remains a quality experience for our students, and that we're continuing to provide the programmatic supports that we know has an impact on retention and student success. So we're doing both and.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dwayne. And with that, I'd like to call the vote. All those in favor, please signal with an aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. The fiscal year 2026 operating and capital budgets are approved. And on behalf of the board, Chancellor, we would just like to express our thanks to you, your team, our shared governance partners, in these well-documented times of the headwinds that we are experiencing. This has been strategic, it's been thoughtful, it's been focused on our mission and our objectives, it's been transparent, and we thank you all very much for your work. So with that, we'll move, and I'll ask if there is any additional business to be brought before this board today. Hearing none, we stand adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.